Off in the distance, we're coming up on one of the first landscape beds that I put in this landscape. If you take a look at this photo here, this was initially what we had when we purchased this place. You can see just how much those spruce trees back there have grown since that time, about 15 years ago now. And the front part of the bed, we actually did a video where we took a look at the varieties that you see here. It was an in-studio video. I'll put a link in the description if you wanted to see that. But for today, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at the rest of this bed, what plant varieties we've got growing behind this rustic bridge. Yeah, so 15 years now, hard to believe, time flies, but look at how full and developed this bed has gotten. I wish I would have had some photos when we initially put this in. We did bring in a tandem load of soil. I believe it was between 16 and 20 cubic yards, and the majority of that load was spread in this back area. I love to create contours in the landscaping as well as my edging. I like to have curves as well. So the front part of this bed also had some of that soil, but predominantly it was back here. And then we added that large boulder. I think that creates interest in the landscape, also creates that elevation change. We're going to go through the varieties one by one, but first, let's go ahead and just do a quick walk around this bed to give you an overall view. I'm going to shout out some of the names and then we'll backtrack and we're going to cover them, as I said, in a little bit more detail. Swedish aspen, Miss Kim lilac, a dwarf mugo pine, an upright columnar European aspen. We've got some daylilies down there, a Hetz midget arborvitae with the backdrop there, a cardinal dogwood. Look at those awesome DeGroots spire arborvitaes. One of my favorite arborvitaes for sure. And then back here, a Tannenbaum, Mugo pine, one of the Globe Colorado spruces, and then we've got some of the Carl Forester grasses back there. Let's start off by talking about the mountain frost ornamental pear that you see back here, just starting to show fall colors. We're about mid-September here right now, and I'm hoping to see quite a bit more into the oranges rather than just yellow. Here's a photo from a few years back. Look at that nice color change in that Mount Frost ornamental pear. Now, I originally bought this thinking it was going to be a sterile ornamental pear variety, but I've got it planted next to some of my fruiting pears that I grow for production, and there's been a couple seasons that we've got a lot of pears off this. They're not edible. They have a really hard husk. If you leave them there, the deer are probably going to find them. If you have deer, deer love pears as much as they love apple. But even though we got some fruit set on this, you just can't miss how this thing looks in the spring. It's one of the first plants to flower out before it leaves out. Look at that nice white color. Isn't that something? But just a really, really hardy tree. The pear foliage, it's kind of a glossy. I like the foliage on it. It's got a little bit more of a thick, stout little bud. But just a great smaller tree if that's what you're looking for. Something that's not going to get oversized. Just keep in mind, you probably will get some pears, even though it's going to be way less than you'll see with the pears grown for production. And let's switch over back in the corner here. We've got just a few Swedish aspens coming up. This was originally just one tree planted here. In the first year, I had some deer come in the winter and they knocked it back almost to the ground. I had to cut it back and basically start over. So the original tree, it did die back, but what's common with the poplar group, Populus genus, or the aspen, they'll come up from the root system. So these few that I've got left, they get whacked back every year by the deer. For some reason, the deer love to brush up against that bark. I don't know if it's the scent or what it is, but I just kind of leave them here as decoys. It seems like they kind of just hang out here and wreck these, and then they come back every year because they've got a vigorous root system under it. Now, if you can imagine, my original idea, I wanted to have that Swedish aspen become towering as a focal point, similar to the one you see here next to my house, but about a month ago, a rainstorm and a heavy wind took this tree down. So now these are the ones that are still living, and who knows, maybe one day they'll get just as tall as that other Swedish aspen. And then behind it there, I've got a Miss Kim lilac that you see right there. Look at this earlier photo, that purplish fall color. One of the greatest things about the Miss Kim lilac. Here's another one right in front of it, and you can see just by looking at it here, this one's a little bit bigger than that back one, and then take a look at this one up towards the front of my house. Twice the size, maybe even bigger. And the reason being, I've mentioned it many times before, the Colorado spruce are incredibly competitive for the moisture and the nutrients. So it's really just a matter of there's just way less moisture back here, and that has slowed these down dramatically, and that's okay. They're fitting in here just perfect like this. Biskim's got a wonderful flower, excellent scent, and then with that fall color, you just can't go wrong. And then right behind it there, we've got another DeGroote's Spire Arborvitae. And here again, we can illustrate just how much slower this has grown compared to the couple that we have up in the front of this bed. Those two get moisture from a sprinkler head if we don't get the rains, where this one really it only gets whatever the rain's going to give it. Now a couple different things happening. Not only is it much drier back here, we're starting to get quite a bit less sun, and if you take a look on the back side, we're starting to have most of the foliage has started to decline back here. Now when a plant is stressed or maybe in decline, it's my opinion, insects are gonna find it and do more damage than on a healthy plant. And I believe we're getting spider mites on this occasionally, but I don't do a lot of spraying. I kind of like to observe and see what happens, see how plants can tolerate those type of things. And then right behind it here, we got a peony that has self-seeded itself. It's one of the white single varieties. I'm not 100% sure, but I think this is crinkled white. This is a single petal variety, and it's a good choice if you want a peony that doesn't need staking. This one stands up well on its own. It reaches about 3 feet in height. I just love how it's naturalizing in this setting. Plant. And then we've got one of the golden junipers here. Junipers are one of the most drought tolerant evergreens out there. So this one, again, I haven't done anything to it, experiencing just a little bit of needle cast in there. Again, this is probably going to start thinning out just because of the shade as that pear tree progresses in size. Up in front here, here's one of the larger asters. I actually transplanted that, took a clump out of one of my bigger ones in my front landscape, just going to start flowering. Asters are one of the best for late fall blooms, and they really bring in the honeybees. That's going to fill in, be quite a large plant eventually, and the asters will also take it pretty dry. Okay, let's move forward here. This is the Pinus mugo pumilio variety, and I keep this sheared every spring. And if you let this mugo pine grow naturally, it's going to get up into that 4 feet, maybe even 5 feet tall. But every spring, as those candles elongate, I do a quick shearing. It takes only a couple minutes, and we've been able to keep it in this pin cushion fashion. I like to do it only in the spring, not the fall. I think fall pruning on evergreens can kind of leave a little brown tip burn. And I have had some of the just natural environmental burn from winter, whether it be winds or sun reflecting off snow, but this one always comes back. It's incredibly hardy. I just love how it fits in here. And right next to us here, we're looking at one of the columnar European mountain ash varieties. This has been a slow grower. The deer are also attracted to this. You'll notice kind of in the middle, a little bit devoid of leaves, but it's starting to fill in nicely now, and it's also starting to stretch taller upstairs. So I think this is going to fit in here really nice. I love the leaf, that compound leaf on the mountain ash, very distinctive there. This one, I think eventually it'll probably get the fruits that you can see on mountain ash, either orange or dark red. And daylilies, yeah, sure not much to look at this time of the year, but boy, when they are flowering, just one of the greatest perennials you can have. So many different colors and styles to pick from. Pretty sure these are Stella de Oro. That's one of the dwarf ever-blooming varieties. Back here, let's go ahead and let's talk about next the Sarah Bernhardt peony. Look at that thing. This thing just steals the show in the spring. Beautiful pink flowers. We have started to use supports on these now. If you like peonies, that's another video I'll throw in the description for you. You can take a look at quite a few different varieties. It's a great perennial to offer just some show-stopping blooms in your landscape. And now let's go down for a low angle and look at this icy blue juniper. Look at how that one plant has just spread all over the place, going up over some of the rock, starting to come in here by these daylilies. And now we're kind of getting to the edge. Now we'll have to make sure we keep that pruned once it hits that edging. But isn't that nice? If they're in contact with mulch or soil, they'll actually layer in and start rooting, and that's why they can get into such massive sizes, even pushing over 20 feet if they've got the space to grow. So any place that this juniper starts spreading out too far, it'll just stop growing there probably because it won't have enough sun. But icy blue, beautiful blue, low growing, only just a couple, 2-3 inches for height. Great juniper to grow. And next to us here, we've got the Hetz Midget Arborvitae. This has never been touched with any kind of pruning equipment. I like the bunchy look that you get by just leaving them natural, just kind of that irregular globe that you see there. Hetz Midget. Then if you want something bigger than the Hetz Midget, look for Pygmy Globe or Little Giant, two other great globe arborvitaes. You just have to pick that size, make sure you look on the label. And if you want massive, holy smokes, look at this thing, this golden globe arborvitae. Look at the size of that thing. And the cardinal dogwood behind us. I think I also mentioned this in that video when we did on the front, and I actually had this pruned back to the ground about 6 months ago. I don't think I've ever cut back a dogwood that hard where I left no stems whatsoever. So this is one season's growth, over 6 feet. Now keep in mind, the cardinal can get up to that 10, even 12 feet high. So we're gonna let this thing stretch its wings, see how tall we can get it. I'll continue to cut back some of those canes or stems that are also layering in. Dogwoods can layer in if they've got that soil and mulch. And those twigs now, they're an olive green now, but they should start changing over into that cardinal red color. Love this dogwood just for the winter effect. And then just below us here, we've got a little blue salvia that came up on its own, self-seeded. Can't remember if I planted this one or not. Blue salvia though, what a tough perennial. Beautiful blooms, May, June. Bumblebees love them. Let's work our way back here. We've got the autumn joy sedum doing very nice. Another one back up here also still doing quite nice. They're gonna need more sun than a lot of perennials, but that one's getting just enough yet. If you like sedum, check that description box for one more video. We covered some beautiful varieties with beautiful colors. Gotta love the sedum. And then I've got just one more Hetz Midget tucked back in there. Let's go ahead and cut through here. We'll turn around and we'll talk about the plants on this side. So Tannenbaum Mugo Pine. You know, you never think they're gonna get that big. They're also small when we put them in. Does anybody else have that problem when you plant? This is a nice, upright, tight Mugo Pine. I kind of wish I would have started shearing it at about half this size. But geez, even only 5 years ago, I still can't believe how much growth it's put on. We're starting to struggle with a little bit of scale on it now, and that's why you see some of this thinning. I've also planted it too close to the mountain frost pear, so most likely I am gonna bring in a tree spade and I'm gonna move this before it gets any bigger. And then it's just a matter of figuring out where I'm gonna put it. Then here we've got one of the Globe Colorado spruces. I'm gonna have to start shearing that to keep it contained. And that's no problem. It's pretty quick to do something like that. The Globe spruce, they tend to want to revert to more of a pyramid. So what we'll be doing, we'll be taking off some of those terminals that start to stretch out, and we'll kind of keep this as an irregular mound. Eventually we could just start shearing all the tips, and this would become a tighter and tighter Globe spruce. But for now, I like the look, and that's where I'm just going to prune out some of those longer stems. Karl Forester grass, it's the most common ornamental grass in our area. This is the time of year when they look their best with those fall plumes that you see here. There's so many different ways to use the ornamental grasses in the landscape. If you like ornamental grasses, I'll link to just one more video that you can take a look at where we cover quite a few different varieties. And then on the other side of the Karl Forester, that's a Weigela back there. It really doesn't ever seem to bloom. We get some dieback on it. I call it a subshrub, and it might be just a little too shaded. It only gets the late day sun. You can see it's, I don't know, providing some cover for the honeybees. They always start perking up this time of day as the sun comes out. Got 5 gallons this year out of that small little setup. What a great hobby. I think one of my favorite things about fall, you get that lower angle of the sun, the different shade that's cast by the plants. Just changes the effect, changes the look, changes the color. So many different cool things to view in here. That's all I've got for now on that second half of the first landscape bed we put in this location. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. We'll see you again next video.